You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. And the good news kept coming on Friday. Just minutes before we came on air, LSU got the fantastic news that Tyree Adams, a 4-star offensive lineman out of St. Aug in New Orleans, has committed to the Tigers. That is just massive news for so many reasons. Tyree Adams committed via Twitter. Apparently, he told the coaching staff. His primary recruiters were offensive line coach Brad Davis and running backs coach Frank Wilson, who, of course, has deep ties to the city of New Orleans and St. Aug. So a massive, massive get. We'll run through Tyree Adams, the player, first, and then we'll go through why I think this is so significant. So, 4-star offensive lineman. He's a top 200 prospect nationally, number 196 in the 247 composite. The 20th best offensive tackle in the entire country, the 13th best player in the state of Louisiana. 6'5", 285. He is a big, athletic, physical offensive lineman from the state of Louisiana that had offers from Georgia and Florida and Alabama and Ole Miss, and he picked the home state Tigers. Part of the reason when he told 247 was it's the home team, and they made me feel at home, even though I wasn't. They're going the right direction, and I trust what Coach Kelly is doing. That's a quote from Tyree Adams to Steve Wiltfong at 247 Sports. Y'all, one of the things we talked about with LSU's first recruiting class under Brian Kelly, which was a hodgepodge, right? It had to be. He came in so late in the process, and he just had to get a roster. It included 15 transfers. And so many of the high school commitments were from out of the state because they had to lean into the relationships that they had already pre-existing. The question that I've had, and the freak out from 6 weeks ago that a lot of LSU fans had when Derek Williams committed to Texas, and we knew Arch Manning was going out of state, which he's going to Texas as well. And of course, we've seen Eli Holstein go to Bama. You've seen a lot of the highest ranked players in Louisiana commit out of state. And the reason, in part, for, if you want to put it this way, the freak out was the best players in state were getting away. And even when you look at the 2023 class, 4 players from Georgia, 2 from Texas, 1 from California, 1 from Florida, 1 from Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Missouri, Nevada. You're recruiting a national class. Of all of your commitments right now, and you got 17 of them, only 4 are from Louisiana. Typically, half or more of your class you want to be from Louisiana. But as we've said, that's going to take time for Brian Kelly and his staff to build those relationships to keep the best players in state. But it's got to start. You got to see that turnaround start with this class in 2023. There's some guys you just knew you weren't going to get. Like you knew you weren't going to get Eli Holstein. Not to say they're not going to keep recruiting him. You knew that you weren't going to get Arch Manning. It doesn't mean you stop recruiting them. We'll see how they do. But mostly, you've got to be able to start turning that tide, no pun intended, but to where you're keeping the best players at home in state. So the reason why getting Tyree Adams committed is so significant is because it checks so many boxes for LSU and for Brian Kelly. Number one, it's a gigantic position of need. You out of necessity, had to go into the transfer portal this year to add offensive linemen. You added 2 and tried to get a third. You thought you were going to get Tyler Steen from Vanderbilt, but he picked Bama. But you added Miles Frazier. You added Tremont Shorts. You're probably going to have a true freshman starting at left tackle. And you got to start building up depth there on the offensive line. So, obviously, O-line, huge position of need. That's number one. Number 2, when we talk about offensive line and we talk about Brian Kelly, what are the positions that we've talked about it so much, that he is most known for producing at the next level? Tight end, offensive line. That's what we talk about all the time with Brian Kelly. You go look at his time at Notre Dame, and it was one offensive line big-time prospect after another when you go look through it. Robert Hainsey, who was a second-round pick of Tampa, who might be their starting center now with Ryan Jensen's injury. Liam Eichenberg was a second-round pick of the Miami Dolphins. You run through the list of the years, and you all, Mike McGlinchey, who went to the 49ers. You know this list. If it's Zach Martin, or Nick Martin, excuse me, Ronnie Stanley. Chris Watt, a huge, long list. Zach Martin, like we talked about, a long, long, long list of really good offensive linemen who have gone on to the next level, who are high draft picks under Brian Kelly. He's produced great offensive linemen. So you're convincing an in-state kid. Boom, Brian Kelly, great at offensive line. You got one. Also, I mentioned the lead recruiters for Tyree Adams, Brad Davis, Frank Wilson, 2 Louisiana guys, and namely Frank Wilson, who is high school football royalty in the city of New Orleans, going into St. Aug and getting a big offensive lineman to commit in the class of 2023. It's the reason. Look, Frank's a great coach. I'm not in any way being dismissive. You ask any of the guys that played running back for him, from Darrell Williams and Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis, and all the guys that came through here, Nick Brissett, they'll all tell you how great of a running backs coach Frank is, and nobody's denying that. He's went on to be a head coach, and he's awesome. But the reason Brian Kelly had to get Frank Wilson here was to recruit New Orleans. And boom, right off the bat, you get a big-time prospect out of Aug. And then you're talking about a Louisiana prospect who had major offers. It's not just taking a kid from Louisiana. It's a kid from Louisiana who had offers from the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs, who had an offer from Florida, where you've got Billy Napier and Corey Raymond and guys, and Jabbar Jalouk, guys with ties to the state who are in Gainesville trying to pull kids away. And you're able to keep that kid home. That's just massive. It's a massive win on so many levels. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that I think Tyree Adams is going to be the greatest offensive lineman in history, but what this symbolizes is it checks all the boxes of what they're trying to do to build this program. So fantastic news for LSU to kick off a Friday, as they've gotten their now 17th commitment for the class of 2023, the 4th from the state of Louisiana, and it's a big offensive lineman from New Orleans, Tyree Adams. We'll tell you much more about him as we learn more. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.